It started like a joke, one of those forgettable mornings at a sleepy federal facility where nothing exciting ever happens, until it does. She handed over her ID card, and the young guards took one look and burst into laughter. "Is this even real?" one said, waving it like an expired library card. But when the scanner blinked, the screen didn't say "access denied." Instead, it lit up with an emblem, gold, glowing, and unlike anything they'd ever seen. Their laughter died instantly. Eyes widened. One of them stepped back. The building fell silent, because in that moment they realized this woman they mocked wasn't just a visitor. She was someone the system was never supposed to see again. And that card, it didn't just open doors, it opened a forgotten chapter in military history. What would you have done in their shoes? The day had started unremarkably. The sun climbed lazily through a cloudless sky, warming the asphalt of a government medical campus on the outskirts of town. A breeze rustled the flag at half-staff, the kind of detail most walked past without thinking. But the woman who arrived just after 800 noticed everything. Her name was never spoken out loud that morning, not until much later. She wore old boots, faded jeans, and a plain windbreaker. Her silver hair was tied back in a no-nonsense braid, the kind that spoke more of discipline than style. No one gave her a second glance at first. She didn't demand attention. She earned it, step by measured step. In one hand, she carried a worn leather wallet. In the other, a thick envelope marked only with faint military smudges, the kind you'd have to know how to read. At the front desk, two young guards leaned on a console with the posture of people who'd been standing too long without anything to do. Private Mendoza tapped his pen against the counter, eyes half-lidded. His partner, Kinley, was nursing a coffee that looked like it had come from a vending machine older than both of them. Then she stepped forward. She said nothing, just handed over her card. It looked ancient. Laminated edges fraying, a photograph that seemed decades out of date. Mendoza gave a chuckle. "Ma'am, I think this belongs in a museum." Kinley leaned in. "Looks like something from Cold War training manuals." They both laughed. She didn't. She just stood there, unmoved. Mendoza rolled his eyes and waved it under the scanner, grinning as if to say, "Watch this fail spectacularly." But it didn't fail. Not exactly. The scanner paused. Once, twice, a flicker. Then the screen went black. The grin on Mendoza's face faltered. "Weird," he mumbled, trying again. This time the screen lit up with a gold emblem neither of them recognized, a triangle rotating inside a circle, symbols pulsing around it like heartbeat rhythms from a language long forgotten. Then red text appeared in bold capital letters. "Flag Protocol, Alpha 5. Identity confirmed. Red zone authorization." An alarm chirped softly. A hum rose from the console like something deeper had just been unlocked. Mendoza's hand froze in midair. Kinley dropped his coffee. And the woman, she was still, watching, not surprised, just waiting. The entire room seemed to tilt. The radio near the desk squawked with new static, not music this time. Down the hallway, a yellow light began blinking on a wall panel. One of the admin staff looked up, puzzled. Another started muttering into a radio clipped to his belt. Doors hissed closed at the end of the corridor. Behind reinforced glass, a surveillance guard stood up, frowning. You could feel it in the air, that sharp, invisible snap when routine gives way to alert. No one knew exactly what was happening, but something was. And the woman at the center of it? She still hadn't said a word. She didn't need to. Her presence had already changed the entire tone of the building. In the security booth, a voice crackled over a loudspeaker, tense and clipped. "Checkpoint 1, this is command. Lock that terminal. Step away. That is not a standard clearance." Kinley and Mendoza backed away from the scanner like it had grown teeth. Another alarm started, deeper this time. Emergency lighting flickered. The guards exchanged panicked glances. "We just scanned it for fun," Mendoza whispered, as if that made a difference now. Staff emerged from offices. Phones rang and were picked up with shaking hands. The calm of bureaucracy shattered into urgent motion. The woman, still watching, still quiet, her eyes fixed on the emblem, still spinning slowly on the screen. It wasn't just a graphic, it felt alive. Then command arrived. The stairwell doors slammed open as Colonel Tessa McBride stepped onto the floor like a storm in uniform. Her hair was regulation gray, her fatigue sharp, her presence undeniable. She didn't come with backup or a clipboard, just authority. "Who triggered Alpha 5? She barked. The room fell into silence. When no one answered, her eyes landed on the woman standing quietly at the terminal. And something shifted in her expression. Recognition, respect, maybe even a little regret. She addressed her directly. "Ms. Cross," the woman inclined her head. "Colonel." McBride turned back to the stunned staff. "What you're seeing is not a glitch. That emblem means one thing: classified clearance above your pay grade. Way above." The colonel didn't stop there. She pulled a black folder from her jacket, one of those that rarely sees daylight. Inside, a single document, most of it redacted. But at the top, the same rotating triangle. "Operation Echo Zero," she read. "6 agents in U.S. history held this clearance. 4 are dead. 1 is missing. And the 6th," she turned slowly, meeting Avery's eyes, "is right here." Dead silence. Kinley looked like he might be sick. Mendoza swallowed hard. "We thought she was joking," he muttered. McBride's jaw tensed. "Effective immediately. Both of you are reassigned to facilities maintenance for remedial training in respect and protocol. Report at 0600. There was no yelling, just consequence. Mendoza and Kinley didn't protest. They couldn't. Their laughter had dried up an hour ago. They simply stood there, stunned, as 2 military police officers appeared at the door, not to detain, but to escort. No handcuffs, no commands, just quiet professionalism. "Ma'am, we'll accompany you to liaison protocol." Avery nodded once and followed. As she passed the 2 guards, neither dared look her in the eye. She wasn't a threat. She was a reminder that respect isn't earned by noise. It's earned by presence. She had it, in every step, in every breath. She walked between the MPs, not as a prisoner, but as someone whose file couldn't be found, not because it didn't exist, but because it wasn't meant to be found. Upstairs in the command wing, Avery sat calmly in a glass-walled room, hands resting on a table. Around her, staff pretended to work while sneaking glances. Nobody wanted to be the first to ask. Nobody wanted to be the one who touched the screen, still glowing with that rotating symbol. Even the colonel seemed more measured now. She stepped in, alone. No fanfare, just a woman facing another who had once moved through shadows for the sake of peace. "We kept your clearance active," McBride said. "Didn't think you'd ever need it." Avery's voice was quiet. "Didn't think I would either. But some things don't stay buried forever." McBride nodded. She understood, more than most. They walked slowly down the hallway, passing framed portraits of past commanders and plaques most people never stopped to read. "Remember Hammond?" McBride asked, pausing near a photo of an older officer with wise eyes. "He's the reason your access wasn't deleted. Said some things should remain open, just in case." Avery gave the smallest smile. He was good, listened more than he talked. The 2 women kept walking, past display cases, past history. "Still carrying the weight?" McBride asked. "Weight never leave," Avery replied. "You just get stronger carrying it." The colonel gave a faint nod. No further explanation needed. They reached a side exit. The bright sunlight outside was now glaring off the pavement, casting sharp lines across the ground. McBride glanced back toward the building, then at Avery. "Those boys, Mendoza, Kinley, they'll learn, or they won't last." Avery's tone was even. "That's how it works." McBride hesitated. "You ever think about teaching?" "I think about a lot of things," Avery said. "Most of them I decide against." McBride gave a dry chuckle. "Fair enough, but if you ever change your mind, we could use your voice." Avery stepped out the door. "I've said what needed saying today. No salute, no farewell, just understanding between 2 veterans who'd both seen too much and survived enough." Outside, the truck started on the first try. Avery adjusted the mirror, catching a last glimpse of the building behind her. Inside, people were still probably arguing over what had just happened, still checking files, still trying to make sense of a clearance that officially didn't exist. As she pulled out, she passed the loading dock. Two new maintenance workers were sweeping the entrance. Kinley and Mendoza, wearing navy blue coveralls. They looked up. Kinley raised his hand. Not as apology, not as excuse, but as recognition. Avery gave a slight nod. That was all. Then she was gone, past the gates, back to the highway, and back to a life most wouldn't understand, even if she told them. In the third-floor window, Colonel McBride watched the truck disappear. A young assistant approached with a tablet. "Ma'am, what do I put in the report?" McBride didn't look away. "Put down that we had a verification protocol. It resolved without incident. All personnel briefed." The assistant hesitated. "And the woman? The Alpha 5 clearance?" McBride turned to face him fully. "What woman? Alpha 5 doesn't exist." She walked away, leaving behind a record full of redactions and a building full of people who would never forget that morning. Not because of what they saw, but because of what they felt. The quiet weight of power hidden just beneath the surface of a calm, silver-haired woman with a card no one could explain. And so, the world kept turning. But the lesson lingered, because sometimes the most powerful people walk softly. They don't shout, they don't demand. They simply show up and change everything. Ever seen someone get underestimated until one moment shattered all assumptions? What would you have done if you scanned a card like that? Let us know in the comments. If this story reminded you that respect should never be withheld just because someone looks ordinary, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about quiet heroes, forgotten clearances, and dignity that never expires. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the person no one saw coming.